Coastal Progressive and Rainbow Forum on Society Bites Radio. And today we have with us Daivd Fairey, who is running for District 73 and the State House of Florida. And I want to welcome Daivd here, and we're going to find out a little bit about why he's running, and he's going to be explaining some things to us, and we're going to have an interesting conversation. Welcome, Daivd.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on today. Really appreciate it.
Great. Listen, I want to give you a chance to first give our listeners a little bit about your background. You've got a great background as a CPA and CFO. That should give you, and plus you have some strong credentials from your work history. Tell our listeners a little bit about your work history at first and your education, and then we can go into some of the reasons why you've chosen to run here and hope bring some improvements to District 73.
Sure, thanks so much. As far as work history goes, I've spent my career, really on the corporate side, corporate finance, corporate accounting, mergers and acquisitions has really been my focus. I am a CPA, by licensure. I don't practice publicly, so I'm not a guy that does taxes, although, we obviously have a deep understanding of how all that works, but I'm not hanging a shingle, so to speak. So, but I've spent my career, like I said, on that side of things. I started my career in the medical device industry and learned a lot about a lot of the reasons why healthcare is really, really expensive, and how we have a healthcare system that really sets certain companies up to really do well and certain places do really well, and ultimately all that burden falls on the patient. And because our country unfortunately doesn't have universal health care, that means this for-profit industry really burdens people. So I got to learn a lot about that, and can tell you some war stories. But I've been in Florida for the last 8.5 years. I took a job down here to be the chief financial officer for a tech company down here, and have gotten to have a lot of fun there. My educational background, I, like most people my age, I'm 37, racked up some great student loan debt while I was getting a lot of great degrees, and I love my education. I'm certainly grateful for it, and it's afforded me a lot of things, but at the same time, I've certainly felt that burden of the student loan debt. But so I have an MBA and Master of Accountancy, and also have a Master's in Industrial Organizational Psychology or Organizational Behavior, some people call it sometimes. So anyway, that's my kind of work history. From a personal side, I'm from Tennessee, and I grew up there. I grew up in Nashville, and it's a nice little. What most people wouldn't understand is it's actually a pretty liberal bubble of otherwise very red state. So I'm sure some places in Florida can certainly understand that. And my from a family history side, my grandfather was in the state legislature in Tennessee, and seeing him be a public servant. He was a district attorney. He was obviously attorney for a very long time. Served in World War II, and just having him as an influence, and knowing that he served in the legislature and has actually the youngest majority leader of the House there. That was obviously decades ago, but that's been a strong influence in my life, and seeing the things that he fought for and that he was able to change, and he is kind of the spirit of my campaign, I guess I'll say. So that's
Excellent.
Me.
I want to ask you about, I noticed that from some background I got on you, that you want to support fully funded public education, and I think that is something that should get the attention of people in District 73. We certainly need to do a better job on some of our education issues, and I'd like for you to give some of your thoughts there and explain a little bit of this and why this is so important.
Sure. So what I mean by fully funded public education is it's really multifaceted, and that was actually a workshop term a little bit, because what I'm learning is, and maybe you can already tell this from my long-winded answers, sometimes I can be loquacious, and we obviously want to capture a lot of big ideas in as few words as possible. So one thing that means is stopping what has already happened in our state in allowing, charter schools and, for-profit education companies to suck the, taxpayer dollars out of money that was intended to be for public education. And that happens, in this past legislature, my opponent voted for, one is just straight redirecting those funds to be shared with charter schools across the state. But also, even in local tax districts like in Manatee County, where we voted to, marginally increase our property tax rate, and so teachers could be paid more. Well, the legislature voted, and like I said, my opponent voted in favor of forcing localities to share that. That's not what we voted for, but just have to share that revenue. Anything that's a revenue for a school, they have to share it with the charter school. And, charter schools may provide us some guidance on how things could be better. They serve it, but they are not the solution. And defunding our public education, just in general, sets us up for failure. We are stripping away, the crucial investment in our most valuable resource, which is our children, and we're setting them up to fail. And that happens in a lot of ways. One is what people can see every day. I have 4 kids. 3 of them are in public school, and it's shocking to me to see how little resources they actually have when it comes to just basic things. I mean, for instance, the copier budget. They put 4 regular sized pieces of paper. They shrink them down to fit 4 to 1 page so they can save money that way. And they blow through their copier budget in the first week of school, a month, and it's crazy. Teachers come out of their pockets every day to pay for basic supplies, and we just don't have to live that way. And if the money that was intended for public schools was given to them and they were allowed to fund in the way they need, these things wouldn't be necessary. But we also need to address the problem of how much we actually pay our teachers. And I think we should pay teachers like doctors. I think we should make the education profession as competitive as we do the medical profession. And people should be clamoring, and the best of the best should be getting into our education colleges to become teachers. And in nations that like Finland that invest heavily in these kind of things, we see the results. They lead the world in public education. Their students are more prepared. And we're not even in the top 10. We're in the top 20, as a nation, and let alone how Florida does. So, and we look at, concentrated into Manatee County and Sarasota County, the basic cost of living. We were at a luncheon recently, and we learned that, the cost, the basic cost of living in Florida on average is $55,000 a year. And that's to afford a $150,000 home or the equivalent, and that in monthly rent. And I say that, and it's hard to that inexpensive of a house is hard to find, and affordable housing is certainly a thing we also want to tackle. But starting salary is in the low 40,000s. It's with not a lot of upshot. And when we do that, when we underfund how much we can pay the people that we trust our children with every day to educate them, to give them the most basic and most fundamental and most necessary tools, and we don't even pay them enough to live in our community, not even near enough. It's immoral to me, and it's a travesty, and we have to change it. And honestly,
David, I want to agree with you and cite. I want to tap into what you said here for our listeners to certainly understand this. We have a serious problem in this area, and District 73 is no different over there in the whole area here. The affordable housing crisis is really serious, and it's affecting our ability to teach our children, and they're having to try to innovate ways to get people housing for teachers and other people. I work with other programs that I work on here. I work with people who are struggling and the deplorable wages they're paid, and it is really raises troubling questions. I can go into more of that a little bit later here, but I just wanted to tap into what you were saying, make our listeners be sure they understand how serious this is. And we cannot go on as a country having this huge divide and growing divide that we have in our pay, the disparity in pay that we have. And I'll quote some stats in a minute, too. And in fact, I'll just do it right now. I'll just quote the stat to you. And I'm sure you've already heard this before. In the last 40 years, the average worker's pay from 1978 to 2018 has went up 27%. That's the average across the country. Well, the CEO pay has risen. What percent do you think that's risen on the average?
I would venture to say 1,000%.
You are right on target, 980 or 970%. How in the world can people accept something like this? No wonder there's all kinds of stats out that people can go, and this is a real problem. We have a disparity in pay in this country among the working class. The middle class America is being destroyed. The very backs of what this country was built is being destroyed. And God help the poor people who are below that, who try to make a living. I work with them on a daily basis often, but I want to stress that, and the people in that District 73 should really be looking at this and asking questions. What can we do? And the schooling situation, too. How are they going to educate their children? The for-profit charter schools are not the answer in most of the cases. I can go into a list of for-profits that when the state and the countries try to turn those over to people. But I want to let you go ahead and talk more, but I just want to tap into what you were saying there.
And I appreciate that. And you've touched on a really good point there about the pay disparity, and I want to touch on a point on that in just a moment. But with respect to specifically teachers, the exacerbating problem that this creates specifically for education, and we're already seeing it, is we do our best and brightest teachers leave the profession or never get into it in the first place. Now, personally, my parents were both educators in Tennessee. My father was a principal for a while, and they both left the profession even 30 plus years ago for the same reason, and it's only gotten worse. And the reason is I have a family. I can't afford to be a teacher. And when we say that to our educators, I mean, again, it's just it is a stain on our soul as a nation, as a state, when we're not doing everything we can to put the best and brightest in front of our children. Because if that isn't worth the investment, then what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? And what we end up with is you have one of a few possibilities. Is one, the teachers that are there are still wonderful, and they fight every day to get more because they care about those kids. But ultimately, we see so many leaving the profession after only a few years because they simply cannot make it work. But then what we also see is, it becomes, for some, a career of last resort. It becomes, a place of refuge because we need more teachers than we have, and the only people that are willing to go there and accept that for the long term, some, and I by no means mean all, but there are some that are not the best that could be there. We're not offering our children the best resource. And while I appreciate anyone, and I have a deep respect for the service of anyone who says, I'm going to be a public school teacher, because, I mean, to me, it is, I have as much respect for that as I have for someone who signs up for the armed services. And, we should thank teachers and look at them and respect them and honor them in the way we do soldiers and the way we do, these people who make grand sacrifices, because they are no different, and they deserve that respect, especially with what they have to put up with. But the ultimate victims in all of this are not just the teachers and their families, but it is the individual lives and the families of every child that is hurt and not educated, and they're given less than they deserve. And we, as a nation, should be fighting